Perfect.
Where to go?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now we're on live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very exclusive live talk series event on Istanbul Blockchain Women YouTube channel. Today we have a very special guest on International Women's Day. We are the ones who come together with the awareness that working together and producing together will create a more sustainable and equitable world. For this purpose, we want to touch more people and reach out. So our today's guest is Professor Dr. Philipp Sandner'ı, the head of the Frankfurt School Business Blockchain Center, and who made valuable contributions to blockchain ecosystem. Given the importance of this day, maybe it would be perfect to mention about the DLT talent program, which is specifically designed for women to increase their presence in the blockchain ecosystem, which is very the parallel and same goal as we do have for Blockchain Women Istanbul Association. So thank you very much for joining our broadcast today, Professor.
Yeah, that's very nice. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here. And yeah, thanks very much for this invitation.
Thank you. And today, Zeynep Stefan, one of our very valuable and beloved members of the association, she's going to be hosting this beautiful event today. And thanks for her efforts who made this came through. So I welcome her and leave the floor to her. Zeynep, now you can take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Ebru, for a nice invitation and the introduction. I'm very happy being with you, with society right now, and I feel very exciting about talking with Professor Sandner'ı because yes, I'm living in Munich, and Professor Sandner'ı is like the founder of blockchain, maybe in Germany. He's like a rock star in this area, and for example, I'm also be a part of the DLT talent, and I learned a lot from him presentations, insights, etc. And thank you very much for being with us here today, Professor Sandner'ı.
Yes, very happy to be here, and thanks for these kind words. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And actually, when you confirmed your availability for the meeting, I started reading your articles, watching your presentations, etc. And for preparing for this event, for this meeting. And after that I found a new vision about blockchain and Bitcoin, etc. So I prepared very different questions with very different perspectives. Thank you very much for being with us right now today. And I would like to my first question actually comes from the more macro view about the blockchain, because when I was watching one of your presentations about the blockchain, you said that you specified blockchain like inevitably important for financial industry, and you defined the projection about the implementation of blockchain. Your projection in 2019 was will reach the top at 2025. You said. I would like to ask if you have right now you have a different projection about this implementation of blockchain in financial industry, or we are still thinking that we have time for implementation in many aspects?
Yeah, that's a very good question about time frame. So let's basically rewind a little bit and catch up where we have been a couple of years ago. You know, when I started with the Blockchain Center 4 years ago, then at that point of time, there was really some dynamic in the financial sector of understanding blockchain technology and trying to make sense out of it. And you had first conferences in Europe and elsewhere where people discussed what could be possible and so on. But most of the presentations were basically outlining prototypes, you know, what could be done, what could be done, what could be executed, what kind of project would make sense. So it were basically use case discussion without any implementation. And at that point of time, it was projected that first real life and large use cases should be with us, should be implemented by 2019, right? That's basically already 2 years ago. And what happened at the end of the day? Nothing. Not much happened actually. We do have some good projects. We do have some banks. We do have some industrial corporations really pushing this topic, and we have some live systems here and some live systems there. But I think the promises about renovated infrastructure for the capital market, securities running on blockchain, and so on, all these promises have mostly actually not met, have not been met so far. And that's interesting because people were really pushing this topic. There were some prototypes and so on, but people have failed providing business proposals for the senior management such that the senior management could decide a specific project to be executed. Sometimes it also was difficult to really clearly define the benefit of the project, the financial benefit to the senior management, such that they can decide. Plus, the senior management very often has still not yet understood blockchain technology. So how can people decide on blockchain projects when they not have digged into this topic very, very, very deeply? And I think we know how difficult this technology is to understand. So it's understandable that people who have not invested enough time, that such people are very skeptical, right? So that's also a reason why these decisions take so long actually to create budget. And that's an interesting point discussing this, because there is also the crypto ecosystem, which works entirely different. Yeah, we have Bitcoin now having reached 1 trillion of US dollar market capitalization. That's 1,000 billion, right? 1 trillion, that's 1,000 billion. That's 1 million times 1 million. That's so extremely much money. And Bitcoin basically has gotten this value by now. Number two is Ethereum and some other crypto assets, of course, so, such that right now we are at 1.6 trillion market capitalization for all crypto assets taken together. So you have basically these huge blocks of crypto assets and their valuations on the right-hand side. And then you have lots of promises from the side of enterprise DLT on the left-hand side, where actually there are some projects on the way, and the European Central Bank is pushing this, and banks are pushing this, and around the world, companies are pushing this. But it still feels that there is some kind of diverging happening, where you have DLT enterprise having some speed, yes, but a very slow speed. And you have the crypto ecosystem, which also progresses, of course, at a much higher speed. Yeah, so there are two universes here which are more and more diverging from each other, and the crypto ecosystem is simply developing much more dynamically than the DLT enterprise segment, which is also developing nicely. Yeah, I think that would be my summary on what's happening in the time frame. Plus, but the interesting question, Zeynep, is now, where do we go from here, right? In case you also feel that there are these diverging ecosystems, enterprise DLT and blockchain-based public blockchain systems, in case you also feel that there are these two ecosystems developing at a different speed. So where do we go from here, right? So in case this progresses as in the last 2-3 years, then everything related to crypto will continue to grow. You know, that's Bitcoin, Ethereum, all these chains, DeFi, and so on. Now the NFT wave is coming, and so on. So everything related to crypto will simply increase very, very dynamically. And everything related to enterprise DLT will also progress, yes, but at a much slower pace, at a much slower pace. And from Germany, I also can report that following the Corona pandemic, of course, companies had to adjust their priorities. And of course, you know, resilience of supply chain networks and, I don't know, home office policies, data protection stuff is much more important than somehow implementing a version 1 blockchain project, yeah, because priorities have been shifted. So just imagine two sub-ecosystems diverging from each other, and imagine what happens in the next years. I would not think that these developments are now, you know, reversed and changing. I would rather think that everything related to crypto will develop extremely positive, extremely dynamic, and so on. And enterprise DLT will develop more slowly.
Zeynep, I'm very sorry.
Actually,
Can I just ask a little question just at this point? I'm very sorry. I just interrupted you.
No problem.
So if you would happen to put in order about the barriers of what the enterprise DLT projects or implementations, what would you place in the first? What would you just put in the first place? And what is the list of the order in importance point of view?
Yeah. Interesting. If I think about it, then I would think that missing education is the biggest hurdle. So, you have to understand blockchain technology to be able to propose a project, and you have to understand blockchain technology to decide on budget for a blockchain project. And we know that the technology is very difficult to understand. There are some thoughts there which are not something we have been educated on at the university back then, right? So so you have to invest a lot of time to be able to understand blockchain technology. And if companies are now only assigning a blockchain lead, a corporate blockchain lead, and this person is able to invest, say, 10% of his workload in blockchain technology, then of course this person will not get to an understanding where the person can propose amazing proposals for the decision maker, right? And the same on the decision maker side. How can the decision maker invest a budget in new proposals when he and his team is also having difficulties understanding it, simply because not much time has been invested in education. And this is entirely different with regard to the crypto startup area. So that's hurdle number one. And hurdle number two is regulation. And that's interesting because I think in a couple of years ago, people called for education to provide more clarity, more certainty, such that companies know what they are allowed to do, such that they can then invest. So sometimes this worked very well, and sometimes we now have gotten some rules to then decide whether we should build something based on these rules or not. Yeah, that's the entire blockchain regulation in multiple countries. That's understood, I think. But now I think there is another thought I would like to share with you, which is quite new. I just had this thought a couple of days or weeks ago, because now that regulation is clear, we see that very often blockchain use cases are touching regulation. And it's very difficult regulation. It's financial market regulation. It's nothing you are educated at university. You always need to have skilled and therefore expensive lawyers to do something. So the regulation now is getting clear, and it is clear that very often blockchain use cases are regulatory relevant. All the securities topics, the digital euro, money on blockchain, it's all regulatory efforts being needed. And the regulation now, you can overcome the regulation in case you are a large company, then you have funds and you create a business proposal, like the banks, Deutsche Börse and others. They can then jump over these regulation hurdles. That's fine. But from a startup perspective, where the innovation is, you immediately see there is this wall of regulation, and you need to have 2 startup fundings to be done to basically invest so much money into lawyers to jump over the hurdle. And it's not that you can't do it. Some people do it and they can do it very nicely. But imagine now there is an alternative. The alternative is called tokens, crypto, NFT, DeFi, and so on, where you can strategically launch tokens and protocols in an unregulated environment, simply focusing on the core of the project. And if you now compare, let's call it regulated crypto startups and crypto startups where regulation might not be required, NFT stuff, for example, then of course, a smart entrepreneur would really think whether he should whether he should confront himself and his team with all this regulation, this kind of wall of regulation, or whether he chooses basically the workaround and chooses a business model where he might not need this regulation, right? I think this is going on currently, and therefore this huge wall of regulation is there, and we know what we could do, but we don't have the budget, the people, the energy, and the money to jump over these regulatory hurdles. That's my feeling. It's not empirically proven. I cannot really provide you with 10 or 20 proofs, but that's a feeling to explain why security tokens are not really picking up, right? And at the same time, you have this NFT wave, non-fungible tokens, which is coming out of nowhere, right? You know, people in the space know that NFTs are out there since more than 1 year, and there have been some topics being done and some tech developments being done. So it's not entirely new, but for the general public, people reading the news, this NFT wave is extremely fastly developing, coming out of nowhere and driven by companies who urgently want to grow and somehow found a way without needing to basically jump over this wall of regulation. That's my interpretation of what's going on. What do you think about it? You know, does it make sense, or would you disagree?
Definitely, I agree. I mean, the education stuff and the regulatory part and how to get around the regulators' point of view. I mean, being just behind the vision, how do you achieve what you want is the ecosystem's main right now problem. And the second problem, I would say the funding purposes, and especially for Turkey, in Turkish ecosystem, we have really problems in investment for capital resources and capital requirements. We have a lot of, and we have some limited capabilities to reach out to alternative capital instruments. So that's our main purpose, because we don't have any regulations right now. It's the gray area. It's an advantage and also disadvantage. But we need more people to be educated. And yes, some regulations which should be not disruptive, but on the contrary, more constructive. That will lead the way actually, and will not block everything. And yeah, there is really a great hype for NFTs and the other tokens, like the crypto tokens will be really a hot issue for the upcoming periods. So Zeynep, now it's your turn for your question.
Thank you. Actually, Professor Sandner, you touched the decision makers at many times during your answers, and I would like to ask the role of ECB, European Central Bank, on this position. Do you still find the contribution of ECB is irrelevant for the whole picture? Or did you change your mind about its contribution? Maybe it can change the dynamics in crypto markets and crypto assets. And what's your perception about it?
Well, I think it's an interesting thought to somehow get a currency such as the euro, I don't know, the Swiss franc, the dollar, the Turkish lira, and so on, to get it on a blockchain system, and then get the benefits of blockchain, right? What is it? You can basically trade more efficiently. You can have cross-border payments once the currency is running on a blockchain system. So this all makes sense. I think these arguments have been exchanged now for 2-3 years. And I think we now know that blockchain and DLT technology does make sense for existing currencies to be ran on blockchain-based systems, right? You see that China is leading the way currently. You know, their system is basically close to be finished. They started in 2014, as far as I know, that they started pushing this, they started developing it, and now their system is basically close to be finished developing. Then you also have, for example, the Central Bank of Switzerland. They will put one system into the market this year, but it's not focusing on the Swiss citizens, but more on the Swiss financial organizations. But still, they are getting the Swiss franc on a blockchain system. And you have the Swedish National Central Bank. The Swedish bank is also exploring in very advanced prototypes whether they should use DLT blockchain technology for their Swedish krona on blockchain, right? That's the European space plus China. And the European Central Bank, at this point of time, they have not really decided yet whether they would like to push the digital euro or not. So they are still in the mode of finding an opinion to then be able to decide in summer whether they should tackle this topic with more energy or not. And of course, the ECB has drafted a couple of reports and analyses. They do have a couple of skilled people who have understood the topic quite nicely. They also have made a survey among European citizens and so on. This is all okay, but it's in my mind not enough. To really say this very clear, China has finished developing basically, and they will soon, maybe next year, put their system in place. It's then running for millions of people, and they might even extend it to African country and to other Asian countries as payment infrastructure. That's China. They have basically finished developing, and the European Central Bank is still in the mode of forming an opinion whether they then start implementation. So in case you from a project management perspective, you have this IT project which needs to be developed, and it will take you years to develop it because it's a large-scale project. And China is basically done with this project, and the European Central Bank is in the process of finding an opinion whether they should ever launch such a project, right? That's to really get this clear. That's not. I think that's really shows that the ECB should speed up their ambitions. We have now also seen on their job webpage that they are seeking to employ one person for the digital euro topic, which is nice. I don't want to overly criticize it. It's nice, but why don't they employ 10 people or 50 people at the same time? Because the topic is important, the topic is demanded. One person to be employed will not be enough. In case ECB employs one person, then the Chinese central bank employs 50 persons, right? And therefore, I think the European, and that's so difficult to really explain it, because it's all progressing, it's not being delayed also. It's all progressing, it's progressing nicely, and people are happy because it's progressing with some speed. But other countries and the entire crypto domain is simply developing much more dynamically. And then, of course, we have to ask whether the current speed, which makes people happy because it's progressing, right? Whether the current speed is sufficient, or whether we should act in a more dynamic way. And here, I would very clearly vote that what is currently being done, even though it is progressing, yes, but what's currently being done is it's not enough.
You already found the Chinese project in Chinese is 8 years ahead from Europe. Many times you specified that.
Yeah, it depends, it really depends because it's different to really look into the future. Some people say it's 5 years ahead. Some people say it's 6 years ahead. Some people say it's 8 years ahead. So depending on what kind of system you have in mind, getting the euro on a blockchain system, then it could be 6 years, 7 years, or 8 years time differential between China and the European Central Bank. Yeah.
Also, you are drawing a digital economy perspective with the components of proof of ownership and digital contracts, selling transactions, portfolio management, insurance solutions, and transportation chain. You are drawing a very wide picture of digital economy, and we are right now the cryptocurrencies. A very small part of this drawing economy. What do you think about the China is very close to this digital economic perspective, or they are just focusing on cryptocurrencies much and doesn't work enough on the other side of digital economy?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I think what we should talk about is basically how the digital economy in the future might look like. And I think that one of the key aspects there is getting some kind of money on a blockchain system. That could be Ethereum, it could be another blockchain, it could potentially be the digital euro by the European Central Bank. There are so many possibilities, but I think the digital economy of the future will have DLT technology as an infrastructure layer on which money is being stored, right? And I think we are here in the very, very early beginning. To be very honest, the only money that currently is running on a blockchain system is Bitcoin, Ethereum, then the US dollar in form of the stable coins, and the Chinese currency. That's the currencies. I'm not seeing the euro here, right? The euro is not running on such systems. That's pretty bad. But you see some modern currencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and also existing currencies. They are running there already, but there has not been done much more with regard to migrating things on blockchain technology. In case I'm looking here to Germany, then my patient data is still in legacy systems. My real estate, I don't have any, but would have been in the traditional real estate register. For car ownership, we still have in Germany this green paper indicating who is the owner of the car, and so on. So to be honest, I think we are, at least in Europe or maybe in Germany, we are very far away from a digital economy, right?
At the point,
might be different.
I would like to, unfortunately, I would like to touch also the new regulation in Switzerland, because right now they are very strong on tokenization. They implemented the new regulations about tokenization in February 2021, and we have also MiCA. And how do you find the regulatory perspective in Europe? And then I would like to touch about Diem and Libra projection in Switzerland. If I don't know, are you classifying Libra as a programmable money or something like the cryptocurrency?
Yeah, that's a good point. So programmable money will be very important because it will help us basically automate business processes, run smart contracts, and so on. So somehow the money needs to go into smart contracts. And I think Libra or Diem, that's the new name, they also have this in mind, of course, but they also need to get started with their network, and therefore they are simply starting with somehow getting now the US dollar on their network. Yeah, they want to get the US dollar on their network, but everything related to smart contracts is still a little bit far away. For example, in the very early Libra documentation, which we saw, smart contracts were possible, yes, but they would have needed an approval process. Yeah, so not everybody can create their smart contracts as he or she wishes. There was an approval process. So smart contracts are on their radar, definitely, and I think that's very important. But for the moment, I think Libra just needs to get going. They started approximately 2 years ago with their first announcement, and what happened since then? Nothing. Right? Nothing happened since then. They have created lots of papers and discussions and participated in conferences and so on. But in terms of execution and implementation, they have done a technical layer, yes, but there is still not one US dollar running on a Libra basis at this point of time, right? But no critics here. I think this will come. In case they are starting, they will start with very high dynamic. So I think in half a year, we could observe Libra or Diem really growing again with the US dollar. Yeah.
Really? Okay. So you are also giving example of Liechtenstein for the regulatory perspective, regulatory framework. What do you think about the last structure in Liechtenstein? They are still more ready for using a programmable money, a digital currency among European Union countries, or they are still, for example, stay back from the other countries like China, like Sweden?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think from a digital programmable euro perspective, Liechtenstein is as far as any other European country, like in the very early beginning of pushing this. We just see that this technology is not developing overnight. It needs to be pushed, and also in Liechtenstein things will take a while. But what Liechtenstein has done in a very brilliant way, they have created an amazing blockchain framework, such that you can create, basically, you can put any right which is out there, any right on a blockchain system. So they don't see token as, for example, digital securities on blockchain. So it's not one specific asset now running on a blockchain, but rather you can put any kind of right on a blockchain system, any kind of right. So that's really massive. And first companies in Liechtenstein are now seeking to explore what's going on there. But it's also not easy because it's a very small country, and the infrastructure for startups is not very well developed in Liechtenstein. So fintech startups, blockchain startups are having huge difficulties getting a foot on the ground in Liechtenstein. And in case you are now believing that innovation is mainly driven from startups, then Liechtenstein is on a good but not optimal way, because in case innovation is driven by startups, and startups have difficulties getting a foot on the ground in Liechtenstein because the environment has not provided possibility for startups and entrepreneurs to get a foot on the ground, then the entire amazing legal framework there could not be exploited very easily, because there are simply hardly any organizations there who would do this, right? Because we cannot expect from legacy organizations that they are exploiting these very modern blockchain token laws, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly, but I would like to touch another point at this point, at this part, the sustainability side, because I'm really read a lot right now. I'm reading a lot about the sustainability side of this blockchain. Also, you shared an analysis about the carbon print of these crypto miners, and you specified that they are producing not so much carbon like watching YouTube or making some business trips or vacations, etc. How do you find this circulation and the ESG side, your environment, social and governance, corporate governance side of these crypto markets, mainly on Bitcoin as well?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So with Bitcoin, we have this, we have the proof of work consensus mechanism in place, right? Such that we need energy to let the Bitcoin network run. This is different with enterprise networks, because there we do not have such a consensus mechanism. So we typically have a consortium there, which is organizing how the network structure is being done. And we have Ethereum as a proof of stake version, which is working entirely differently, because there you do also not have such a huge energy consumption. So the energy consumption of Bitcoin is primarily affecting the Bitcoin protocol and a couple of other very similar protocols. And the key question, what you're referring to, is the following. I think, yes, it's pretty bad that so much energy is being consumed for maintaining the Bitcoin network. That's not very sustainable. But I think the question with how much energy is being consumed is the wrong question. I think we should ask what kind of energy is being consumed here. Is it basically green energy, or is it fossil fuels which are burned for getting the energy? And here, I think it's pretty clear that Bitcoin is specifically profitable when you are mining at very low electricity costs. Yeah? So if electricity costs are very low, then mining becomes very profitable. And the question now is, what energy sources are producing the lowest cost electricity? And here we know that the lowest cost electricity, which is then resulting in profitable Bitcoin mining, the lowest cost electricity is produced by hydro energy, wind energy, and solar energy, not necessarily by burning fossil fuels. And this now has already led to a share of 50% plus of renewable energy, which is being burned by the Bitcoin network. Yeah, so it's not just fossil fuel which is being burned to run Bitcoin. I think that's a very important fact. It does not make things very good still, because the energy is still consumed, right? But it improves the position of Bitcoin at least a little, because it's not just fossil fuels which are burned. The majority of the energy being consumed is coming from green energy or green sources. That's Bitcoin, right? And if we talk about sustainability and SDGs and ESGs and so on, another important point is, for example, CO2 trading. Yeah, that's also a very fascinating topic, because you could deploy CO2 certificates, carbon certificates on top of blockchain networks, and then they could be transacted worldwide. You can issue them on DLT networks, you can consume them on blockchain networks. So that's really fascinating if you think to move carbon trading and carbon certificates on blockchain systems. Yeah, that's not directly affecting sustainability, of course, but still it's a very good infrastructure for this entire area of carbon trading and carbon certificates. That's just now two highlights focusing on sustainability.
Sustainability, yes. I totally agree with you, especially on the CO2 trading part, because I wrote an article about the blockchain use cases on CO2 tokens and the trade on blockchain and how it should be promoted in order to sustain or in order to prevent climate change or support the climate change actions, actually. So this is a very crucial point. Thank you so much. We have some questions on YouTube. Maybe we can just ask it after your questions, but I just want to leave some time for the questions from coming YouTube. So Zeynep, you go on, and then I will just
actually, I would like to support my question with one clarification with Professor Sandner, because it's very crucial what he said. Because after when Bitcoin, when Tesla announced their Bitcoin investments, the ECG funds, especially in London and Europe, announced that they will rethink about their investments on Tesla, because they found Tesla very green investment and green company. And then after they considered if this investment decision is correct or not. But after Professor Sandner this description and definition about these
energy consumption,
buying Bitcoin and being a green company. So it's very good point. Thank you very much. And I would like to, that's a very interesting question about the digital identity. It's a question from our YouTube channel from Meral Şengöz. She said, if digital identity is important for processing blockchain environment, and we know that the current regulations also from Switzerland or Sweden, they are pointing more on digital identity. What do you think about the importance of digital identity in this process?
Yeah, that's one of the hottest topics for the next couple of years. I think I would not found a company in the area of digital identity right now, because right now the dynamic is elsewhere. But still, digital identity is fascinating, and it will definitely come. But I think more people need to understand it to really then see what's the benefit of it. And I think mostly those people who are in control of identities, they have to understand it. That's compliance officers at banks. That's people in the public authorities who are running the identity systems, like passports and all this stuff. I think more understanding needs to be done there, and then I think we can expect digital identity to really pick up. And I think it's not just identity, by the way, because imagine we and our identity is sitting on a blockchain system. It's like basically the root of anything, because you can then connect all kinds of data points to it, medical data and other data, everything then sitting on chain. And I, as the originator of my own data, I'm the only one who can access the data. Nobody else could access all the data, which is basically connected on chain or off chain to my identity on a blockchain system. I think that's really brilliant.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a long way to go to change this. But it's, I think, one of the hottest topics in the next 5 years.
Maybe we should change the description of the identity. I mean, we are just thinking about from the perspective how we are taught about the identity description, because we are given an identity by the government, by the state, and the passport, the information on the passport or information on the identity cards. I mean, that won't be the issue, in my opinion. What makes the identity component in the blockchain ecosystem or blockchain technology when it's completely merges with the technology, because it's going to be self-sovereign, and it's going to be when, how, and what information to be opened or to be shared with whom. That will depend on the person, and this information won't be just the ID informations that we have on our IDs. There are a lot of informations which describes that, which makes me as Ebru. It's not just how my state defines me as Ebru. So there will be a lot of components. And I think I really agree with you. It's a long way to go. But you mentioned something. If I would found a startup, it would definitely not be on digital identity, you said.
Not now, because
not now.
But that's a different topic, because as a person founding a startup, I think you always have to try to identify where is the largest trend in 1 year or in half a year? And that's exactly the domain where you should found a company. Where is the strongest dynamic in half a year, right? You could now still jump on the NFT bandwagon, right? You could still also jump on the decentralized finance topic. And I think everything related to crypto makes the life easier for founders because this is where the dynamic is going to. And the topic around digital identity, I think this will be huge. But in case you're founding a company now, there might not be any revenue in the next 24 months because the topic is simply developing very slowly, at least in Western countries, right? Might be difficult in other different in other countries, but in case people would like to found a company, maybe in 2 years, then things like certification, data monetization, identity could make really much sense. But today's hottest sectors are a little bit different, you know, DeFi, NFT stuff, and so on.
DeFi, yes. Thank you.
I would like to touch a little bit tokenization, Professor Sandner, because you have a very good definition about tokenization. It's like a container. Put whatever you want in, and we know that also Switzerland have prepared a very detailed regulation about tokenization, exactly. And you defined the rights of ownership, exhibition right, lien, and copyright in it. So I would like to ask because I would like to digital key, and we will hear right now. It's a very hot topic, and we know that there are many different different projects on it. So it will be very crucial, more crucial in following days. So you find this identity and rights of ownership is a kind of execution system. So it will be the first phase of digital euro, or the following steps like system operator technology or monetary units. What's your perception about it?
Yeah, so first of all, let's define what a token is. You know, that's not my thoughts, by the way, but that's the people in Liechtenstein who have invented this. They said that that the best description of what's happening here is the so-called token container model. This is what you have referring to, right? And in this framework, a token is nothing else than a container. It's an empty container. It's sitting on a DLT system, but think of it as a container. And in the container, you can package something. You know, you can package the right of ownership on a stock. You can package the euro. You can package securities. You can package art pieces or other things. And then you would have existing rights which are out there, you know, rights which are out there since years or decades. And you can now connect such rights to a DLT-based token. And once you're moving the token around the world, you know, from here to Istanbul in 20 seconds on Ethereum, then I also have moved the right of ownership with the token, because the right of ownership is inside the token, being like something like a container. You know, I think that's really a good image to explain what a right is and what a token is, and what especially a tokenized right is. I think that makes extremely much sense. And maybe in case you want to read more, that the Liechtenstein Token Act is also there in English language. There is an unofficial translation, which is, I think it's 300 pages, but it's really an excellent document for understanding how the digital economy of the future and the token economy of the future will look like. But this still needs a little bit more time to develop. As I said, the current strongest dynamic is going on in the crypto ecosystem.
And we received a very good question from Ebru Guven about, because this is something that I'm thinking a lot about it, the systemic risk. As a risk manager, I'm still understanding the cryptocurrencies or crypto markets creating a systemic risk, because they are running very fast. They are running faster than regulatory body, and we right now we are not seeing very different fraudulent activities on the market. We know every week the SEC calling somebody for their fraudulent activities and some problems on the market. So I would like to ask, do you consider a systemic risk that arises from cryptocurrencies, crypto markets on world financial body?
Well, actually, there is the first part of the question. Maybe I should also remind you this. The systematic risk is much more refers to when CBDCs have a worldwide usage, in case. a small negative news about the country's economies, for example, like Germany, like France, would that maybe result in people to switch easily from that currency to US dollar? I mean, what I mean is that, for example, you have the euro in blockchain or whatever, I mean, it's CBDC as a CBDC, but in case you have a very negative or small, even a small negative information, will that affect people's switch to the other currency, like, for example, US dollars?
Yeah, that's a good point, and also the systemic risk aspects. So I think, you know, systems will be built in a way that switching from one currency into another would be easily possible. And I think this is interesting from an inflation perspective. So I think inflation might really be arising because of this enlarging central bank balances in the last 12 months, right? And if people now then feel that their money is being inflated, right, they can move the money elsewhere to, say, Bitcoin, to stocks, to Swiss francs, and so on. For example, you just need to have an account with Revolut. I don't know how large Revolut is in Turkey, but in Germany it's okay large, but in Switzerland, for example, it's huge. And it's basically one online bank, has nothing to do with blockchain technology, right? But it's an online bank where you can have multiple currency accounts assigned to me. And in case I feel that I would like to move my money out of the euro, then I simply click 2-3 times on the iPhone and I have moved my money to Swiss franc, right? So it goes within 10 seconds. And I could also move the money from Swiss franc to euro or other currencies. That's really fascinating. Has nothing to do with blockchain technology, but allows people to leave a currency in case they are unhappy with it. They could also move to Bitcoin if they wish, or move to US dollar, or move to Turkish lira, or move out of Turkish lira. That's fascinating. I think it's not well understood yet on behalf of the system and central banks how easy, especially young techie people, can move their money from one currency to another in case they feel unhappy with it. That's something which is not easily possible for elderly people who are not online, but for young people, I think it's really a blessing to be able to have this tech, because it might help us avoiding inflation of our money, because we can simply move our money in other currencies. I think that's, but I think young people really have to dig into this and investigate apps like the Revolut Bank and other things to be able to then do it if it's needed. And concerning the systemic, but this is going without blockchain, right? Blockchain is not yet ready for this. And concerning other systemic risks, I think there is still some regulatory risks left. You know, we still don't know what is the stake of the USA on stable coins, for example, and on cryptocurrencies in total. Do they like it? Do they not like it? That's still open because of the government change. In Europe, I think we are quite pro cryptocurrencies, at least concerning the legacy cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. But we don't know yet how the MiCA regulation will be formed. So this might be also a systemic risk for innovation moving out of Europe. That's still possible, right? And then we have, of course, technical risk. You know, there might be a hash collision or something else in the Bitcoin code. You know, it's extremely unlikely that there might be a technical issue, but it's still a risk, I would say so. And of course, in the future, we will have the quantum computing topic, which might also be dangerous for blockchain-based systems. But this is something to be addressed later. But again, it's a risk, definitely. We have in Bitcoin and in other networks, we have minor concentrations, which also is a risk, I would say so. Then we have technical risks, for example, in smart contracts, which, for example, carry money and don't release it anymore. That's not systemic risk, right? But it's still risks. And there is a large remaining systemic risk that's still related to the energy consumption, right? Because I previously explained that the energy consumption is bad, but maybe not as bad as thought, because it's 50% plus green energy being consumed in the Bitcoin network. But, and I think that's most important, most people don't dig that deep. And for people who are superficially assessing Bitcoin, they very often immediately come to the conclusion that Bitcoin is bad because of the energy footprint, right? So they don't dig that deep. So they might come to such conclusions very early and immediately. And if many people, especially, you know, with this green environmental trends, climate change is coming up, then there might be like a very huge Bitcoin reputational damage here for people who are not asking deeply, but who are superficially feeling that Bitcoin is very bad because of the energy footprint. That's let's call it psychological, societal, systemic risk, which is in my mind which can really be significant. You know, imagine if all people engaging in climate change are overnight having a very bad argument against Bitcoin, you know, that really can have some effects.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Well, I'm still finding this systematic risk, thinking about systematic risk a little early, because we are still consider the regulatory risk and also operational risk on this side, and systemic risk comes after that. And I would like to turn to our title, that Digital Euro and Bitcoin, do we need both? And I know that there's a rule in economy that good money and bad money, and the bad money will leave out the good money out of the economic cycles, economic conjuncture of the economies of the countries, etc. So what do you think about it? We can use both together, or we have to choose one?
That's a good question. I think you always have to have the choice. I think there is no either or here. I think this technology allows us so many broad innovations out there. I think it's difficult to imagine what will be possible with this technology. It's extremely broad, you know, and now see what happens with the NFT topic within a couple of weeks. You know, that's massive. It's developing extremely speedy, and I think what's very important is that people are investigating this technology for their own safety, to store their money, to understand it, to maybe have a career in this field, to maybe found a company in this field, and to also understand the importance of cryptocurrencies. Actually, I think it's very important that our young generation, well, I still feel young with 41, but especially the people who are even younger, that they are really investigating this technology and ask themselves what can this technology add to contribute to them in terms of good things. That's very, very important, because it's a lifetime chance which is out there, and very often people and young people have not really discovered this fascination about this technology. Yeah.
I would like to ask your recommendation for a developing country like Turkey. You already specified the recommendations for the young people, for the people that would like to invest more in technology, and you said this is a lifetime chance, one chance for a lifetime, for maybe being in crypto markets and being in blockchain technology. And thank you very much for your answers. Ebru, we have one question.
One more question. Yes.
From Serkan Ünal. It's about the mining process still consuming energy, and he's asking if there are some projection about decreasing this consumption. Do you know what's going on in Europe or maybe in China? They are developing new technologies for decreasing the energy consumption for this mining process.
That's a very, very complicated question. We should have another talk on this, but the quick answer is the following. You cannot reduce the energy consumption of Bitcoin. You know, this is by theory not possible. You will always consume so much energy what related to the expected price of Bitcoin. If you think the Bitcoin is higher, then you would invest more energy in Bitcoin, and you invest so much energy such that your profit margin is close to zero. That's basically the theoretical optimum. So you will have endless energy being consumed by Bitcoin. But I think Bitcoin has a tendency to consume more green energy and less fossil fuel energy. I think this tendency is clear. And therefore, the question is very good, because you can rephrase the question a little bit, because I could imagine that this tendency of Bitcoin towards green energy, not fossil fuels, by the way, that this tendency also might even stifle innovation in the energy field, where, I don't know, engineers in the energy fields are trying to explore even more and better ways to create efficient energy off the grid in some mountains where hydropower is possible, and so on. I think there might even be an entirely new subdomain of energy being created, just energy off the grid for Bitcoin purposes in the future. It sounds strange, might be a little bit scary even so, but could also be interesting, and not that bad as it sounds, because it would focus on green energy, not necessarily fossil fuels.
And also the waste energy with the waste consumed energy wastes to recycle it for, again, energy purposes. It's really complicated, but yes, it's going to be a hot issue in the following years, maybe, to make Bitcoin a much more greener one. But one last question I want to address you also from our audience. So it's about the travel rule. The question is, when Europe begins using CBDCs, will that currency be subject to travel rule too? And do you think travel rule can be implemented when we take DEXs, decentralized access?
That's a tough question. That's a tough question. So travel rule affects basically whether money is being allowed to transact it, and that basically in parallel information is being exchanged such to allow this transaction from happening. One of the reasons is, for example, avoiding money laundering and so on. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Actually, ideally, and this is a regulatory area which could basically be enforced in the future. Ideally, in parallel to CBDC transactions, in parallel also to crypto transactions, including DeFi and so on, the companies engaged here might be asked to follow the travel rule and exchange information on the transaction partners. I think this will be the area where more regulation can be expected for the Bitcoin. But I still wonder, and I need to dig into this to be honest, I still wonder how you can do this in a DeFi world, where smart contracts are receiving and getting and sending the money, whom to address with the travel rule when the money is coming from or going to a smart contract address. How should this work? If somebody knows this, please write me. I haven't inspected this myself, but would be worth a talk in the next months, because I think regulation will go this way.
So this is going to be our next interview's topic then, I guess.
Exactly.
Can we have a word for that?
Somebody to investigate this topic. It's a tough one.
Okay.
Find people who understand crypto and the regulation stuff on this regard. That's not easy to find people who have both skills, right?
Okay. Thank you, Professor, for your time and for this beautiful event on this beautiful day. And we'd like to see you again on our YouTube channel again for another event in the future, maybe. And also, Zeynep, thank you so much for your contributions and for your efforts again for
always a pleasure
organizing this good event. And Professor, do you have last words just for the closing?
Well, thanks for inviting. It's fascinating to have such a lively blockchain scene in Istanbul. I wasn't aware of this. I already told Zeynep that it's fascinating to have even entire associations for women in blockchain. That's fascinating. We don't have this in Germany at all, right? That's pretty amazing. And I think you're doing a very, very good job for disseminating the knowledge of blockchain, bring people together, even in a Corona world where meeting is difficult. And I just would like to really emphasize it once again. It's blockchain and crypto assets. That's a life-changing opportunity. It only happens once in our life. It will never come once again, such a huge chance. And therefore, I think it's very, very important to investigate blockchain, crypto, DLT, invest more time. I don't know, found a company, work in a company, do an internship, do this and that, but somehow expose yourself to blockchain technology. I think that's one of the very important advices I would like to make.
Thank you. This is what we are also working for. Thank you so much for everyone who have joined us today for this very good interview. And thank you for your questions also on YouTube. And we hope to see you again in another broadcast. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.